Talk the walk with every sip and laugh. Coffee's the fuel, martini's the craft. Conversation swirling in the cool night air. Talk the walk, we're going somewhere.
Good morning, Alan.
Good evening, Leanne. Good to see you.
That martini looks very refreshing.
It's very nice.
Hey, you're back at home, and your trip to Nantucket was very, again, nice and refreshing, great time with family, that type of thing?
Yeah. The first week we were there by ourselves, the first 8 or 9 days, which is nice. Then my daughter and her family come. I call them the East Coast family for the second week. I hope next year my son joins us as well from LA. So
Oh, lovely. That'd be great. Yeah, nothing too exciting here, just a beautiful day in winter in Brisbane. If you're joining us live, let us know where you're joining us from and if you're sipping a martini or a hot coffee as well. Today's episode, Alan, is quite controversial. I remember you sharing this the very first time we spoke. This is probably the number one thing I remember. And you said to me, ignore your feedback, like ignore the smile sheets and everything else. No one has ever said that to me before. Everyone talks about how it's important to get feedback and listen to feedback and take it on. Why do you take the contrarian stance on this topic?
well, the mistake is that people feel it's important to be liked. It's not. It's important to be respected. And as hard as it may be to believe this, especially in my speaking career, plus my consulting and coaching work, but in my speaking career, I was often or usually hired to discomfort the audience, to really tick them off, because the buyer would say these people need to be shaken from where they. I think they walk on water. They don't. You have to tell them that. I mean, my favorite was at the year I was at a human resource conference, and Peter Senge was there, and who wrote Flawless Consulting? Peter Block was there, and I was there. And those two were talking about rearranging the tables and looking into each other's eyes, and that's made a big difference. And I put a stegosaurus up on the screen. I said, "You see that? That's you." So I don't care about feedback that I don't ask for because it's always for the sender. They're trying to prove something.
Yes. Okay. And I know actually the other thing I wanted to say before you spoke about that HR conference, because that's the other thing that stood out from our first conversation is you called HR hardly relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people still are shocked by that. You obviously don't really care what people think.
I don't care what people think. In 35 years of consulting in the United States and globally, I have run into 3 human resource people who saw their job as helping me meet their line buyers and setting me up with them so I could fulfill their needs. All the rest of them were hell bent on either delaying me or becoming a partner and doing it their way or going through them. They're tasked to vet me. I don't have time for that in my life. And, if these people were any good, they wouldn't be in human resources, frankly. So we all have to be bold enough to take feedback from people we respect and ask, but not from others. And I'll tell you something, Leanne.
Mm.
Women are worse on other women than any other dynamic. Women critique other women without being asked on their clothing, on how they move around the stage, on their jewelry, on their haircut, and so forth, more than men would ever do.
Okay, yeah. You really don't care what people think. I'm so curious to hear what people say in the chat about that. Look, I don't. It's fascinating. This whole thing around feedback is for the sender,
Yeah.
and my friend Michael Bungay Stanier wrote the book The Advice Trap, and he said the reason we do it, is we actually feel like we're being valuable, but a lot of time it's like actually maybe you're signaling higher status, more expertise by just sharing your unsolicited advice with someone.
Oh, it's terribly low self-esteem. People feel badly about themselves because someone else is on the stage. Someone else has the spotlight. Someone else has something. In Australia, they talk all the time about the tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah.
I know Australians are telling me there's no such thing. Nobody talks about that here. And there's, 80% of people I know in Australia do talk about it. So the problem is that when you have low self-esteem, you want to try to tear other people down to your level of perceived inadequacy. I'm walking out of the restaurant the other night. My car's parked right outside with the top down, my Rolls Royce. And the guy says, "Is that your car?" I said, "Yes, it is." He said, "You have a little scrape over here." I said, "You take a look at this car and that's what you saw?" I said, "You know what you call that?" He said, "What?" I said, "Passive aggressiveness."
You said that to him?
Of course I did.
Yeah, I would have been like, what an awesome car. I'm actually surprised. So you actually leave the car with the top down parked. You don't care about that.
In the US, you get tremendous respect. I mean, and not everywhere. You park it in a dark alley in the inner city, you
Sure.
got a problem.
Yeah.
But you park a car that rare someplace, it gets tremendous respect from people, and
Mhm.
it's very comfortable. And one of the things I love about this country is the fact that what people ask me is, "How do you get one of those?"
Yeah.
They won't say, "Oh God, blah, blah, blah." How do you get one of those? So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it still has the American dream, and that's wonderful.
I have to ask you that question then, Alan. I know it's off topic, but how do you get a Rolls Royce?
Well, you have to have $500,000 basically, and then you go to a Rolls dealer and you design the entire car on a configurator.
Mm.
You can do everything except the engine. So no two Rolls Royces are the same in the world.
Wow.
So you do the seat belts, you do the roof liner, you do everything. And when you're done with all that, then they tell you what it costs, but it's going to be around $500,000. Uh, and uh, and then you wait between 6 months and a year
Mm.
because, for example, the wood in the car comes from pieces they keep. So if anything happens to your wood, they take it from the same piece, from the same tree. They got it from somewhere. In each wheel well, there's an umbrella, a full size umbrella. You have 18 options on the umbrella. And when you take the umbrella out to go somewhere and it gets wet, you close it up, you put it back in the wheel well, and there's a heater in there that dries it.
No.
Yes.
That's incredible. That is so cool.
Yeah.
We got a LinkedIn user, I'm not too sure, but thanks so much for being here today. Truth bombs. Yes, Alan is absolutely letting out the truth bombs already. I think that martini is helping. So I do want to talk. You talked about this, but how do you know? Like, how do you know if? Because sometimes there is actual valid feedback from someone, and maybe it is unsolicited, but it's like, yeah, maybe it's worth taking on. What is a sign that they're giving it to sort of pump them up as
You
opposed
know,
to helping you
my,
out?
my wife and I are watching The Chosen right now, which is a streamer about Jesus, right? And the disciples and the whole business. And the funny thing is, whenever he has to teach them something, he tells a parable, and the disciples say, "Oh God, there he goes again." So I'm going to answer your question with a parable, and that is, how do you know that this particular feedback isn't worthwhile? Some unsolicited feedback must be worthwhile. Well, I'll tell you something. If you go out in the street and you find $100 bill, you say, "Oh my God, this is really valuable." But you're not going to go around looking for other $100 bills. You're going to go on your whatever your business is. And my contention is, even if you happen to hear or read a piece of unsolicited feedback that makes sense, it's not worth putting up with all the rest of that crap.
Okay. So you're saying, so blanket rule, just don't listen to it.
I'm in San Francisco. I'm doing a thing for the National Speakers Association chapter out there. There were 200 people. And the coordinator gives everybody a feedback form, a smile sheet.
Yeah.
And she says, nobody's leaving without filling this out. She says, "Aren't you going to stay and read them?" I said, "Hell no." So I leave. And she calls me a week later and she said, "I have the results." I said, "I don't care. I'm going to tell you what they are. Of 200 people, you got 198 tens and two nines." I said, "There you go." She says, "Well, I want to talk to you about the two nines." You cannot
Mm.
make this up. And she
No,
said, the two nines were
really?
about, she said, the two nines were about your satirical New York sense of humor. I said, "Lady, you have not yet heard my New York satirical sense of humor, but you're about to." So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what those two people said.
No, but would it have been different? And I know we're throwing hypotheticals here, and sometimes it's pointless to be hypothetical. What if the feedback was like 177s? What would you do then?
Well, here's the question you ask. Who's the buyer, and was the buyer pleased? And I
Yeah.
happen to know that the president of the chapter, who asked me to come out, came up to me later and said, "That's one of the greatest speeches I've ever heard," and we're in the speaking business. So she was
Yeah.
happy. I don't care about everybody else,
Yeah.
and of course, in business, which you and I are in, it's even more important that you please the buyer and don't worry about the audience.
It's so counterintuitive because everything we're taught is like please the audience. It's like do everything like make I don't know, like I've heard that my whole life. Let me know in chat if you've heard that too. It's like you want to impress the audience, but you're more concerned around the buyer.
There are three kinds of speakers. There is the speaker-centered speaker. And that person wants to get in the joke they like, the story they like to tell, and that's why they're there. Then there's the audience-centered speaker, which you're talking about. The
Yeah.
audience-centered speaker wants the standing ovation, right? I
Mm.
call it the TSA these days, the tepid standing ovation. Everybody gets a standing ovation, and it doesn't mean anything. Then there's the buyer-centered speaker. And the buyer-centered speaker wants to make sure the buyer's delighted, so they get A, more business, and B, referral business. And that's how you make it in life.
Yeah. Okay. So question, and sometimes, okay, so if your buyer is like an event organizer, like someone who's running a conference, they probably want the audience to be happy. So obviously by pleasing the audience, you're pleasing them.
Okay, so here comes more trouble. The event coordinator is never a buyer, ever. The event coordinator has been tasked, air quotes, to get the thing running. But
Mm,
there's somebody's money involved here. It's the vice president of sales, it's a CEO, it's somebody who has charged that people with making this happen because that's a task you assign to lower levels. But an event coordinator, a meeting planner, is never a buyer.
yeah. Yeah.
There's American Association of Meeting Planners. Most of them are out of work.
Okay. Oh, wow. So let's look. I know you're going to bring up smart sheets, which is why I had the prompt here already, because I know there's a lot of people in my audience who do rue over these feedback forms, and they're not like you at the moment. Like that, like this Alan, it's like discards the feedback forms. They look at the feedback forms, they rue over them, they mull over them. How do they sort of trend more towards what you do?
Well, you have to build up your self-esteem and you have to build up a coterie of people you respect and who you can ask for feedback. In
Hmm.
any group you approach, you can talk to your buyer, you can talk to a few other people you've met who you found to be very, very intelligent, and you say, I'd love to get your feedback after this. I mean, all of us should be calling the buyer after an event anyway.
Yes.
So that's one thing. The second thing is, in non-speaking endeavors, yeah, you talk to professionals you respect. Do you respect your attorney? Do you respect your accountant? How about your designer? And you get their opinion. Maria, uh, she will either say to me, if the audience isn't good, she'll say to me, Alan, nobody else could have gotten them that far. It wasn't you. They were a black hole.
Yeah.
But she'll also say to me when I walk off stage, what the hell were you thinking? So we're married 57 years, and I can give her feedback. I can say very gently, of course, when she says, "How do I look in this?" There's only one answer: you look fabulous.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Of
but
course.
uh, you have to be able to identify people who will give you honest feedback, and don't hang out with people who deliberately lie because they think you're doing a favor. If you go to a
Mm.
National Speakers Association or an Institute of Management Consultants meeting or something, and you present something, people say, you were great. You were great. Oh my God, that was fabulous. Because that's what they want you to tell them. But the only way you improve it if
Interesting.
somebody actually says to you,
Hmm.
you didn't use any examples. Nobody could recognize what you were talking about. That's helpful. Not saying,
Yes.
oh, you were great.
Yes, yeah, actually giving specific guidance on that. In terms of like people that you respect, um, who do you respect, Alan? I'm just trying to think of like why people I respect certain people. It's because I admire the way that they, admire their expertise. I know that they're on top of their game. They're probably someone that I would like to be, or there's elements of their life that I think I'd love to emulate that, and so I'll respect their opinion. Is it the same for the people that you respect and ask for advice?
Yeah, I respect a lot of my peers. I mean, I respect Seth Godin and Noah Kagan and Marshall Goldsmith and people like that. I mean, Marshall and I have written a book together.
Hmm.
So I respect people who are at my level in their own niches. I also respect people who are in my area, but don't do what I do. They specialize in a given kind of consulting, for example. And so they're financial experts or they're technical experts or they're, organization development experts. I respect that.
Mm.
So it's not that I don't respect anyone. It's that I won't take feedback from just anyone. And
Mm.
that's a big difference because you get bad feedback and you assume, well, three people told me this, I better change. What they're doing is they're sinking the boat.
Yeah. And you'd get this, I mean, you send out your mail out every week. I'll actually link to that now for both of our newsletters. But I'm sure, no doubt. I mean, you say some things, you write some things in that email that provoke reactions, and I'm sure you get feedback to your newsletter every week. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. And the feedback is 99% positive and 1% negative. 2 weeks ago, somebody wrote me and said, I think what you wrote this last Monday had a political tint to it that I don't agree with. So I'm sorry, Alan, but I'm going to have to tell you that I'm leaving. I don't care that you're leaving. People come and go every day. I don't read who's coming and going. I don't give a damn. And it's a free newsletter. So what you're doing is you're
Mm.
making an announcement that you're leaving. That is, guess what? Passive aggressive.
That is passive
So
aggressive. Yeah.
it is. It really is. So now Monday, that's Monday Morning Memo. But every day is a minute with Alan, a video. I just did 5 more today.
Yeah.
And that video, if you watch the responses on social media, that gets a lot of play. and it's usually positive. And I'm gonna tell you something here for people listening and watching this on video and
Yeah.
later. Uh, the uh, the key here from a marketing standpoint is to know who your audience is and to give them what they need, but don't try to provide something for everyone. So if you look at, now I'm going to use American examples, but Howard Stern, Rush Limbaugh, Don Imus, people like that who had huge audiences, they knew, Johnny Carson knew exactly who their audience was, and they kept pumping things in there for their audience. So I'm not out to convert. I'm there to delight people who like what I do.
I like that. You're there to delight people who like, kind of buy already into the Alan sort of not spin, the Alan way of being.
The Alan Weiss zeitgeist, yes.
The Alan Weiss zeitgeist. I love that. And let us know if you have any questions about feedback in chat as well. And I think that kind of alludes to this, like the customer is always right. Like we hear that all the time. The customer is always right. Do what's right for the customer. You don't agree with that, I'm assuming.
Most people don't anymore. Nordstrom, the big department store here, had a habit of taking back anything that was returned. So there'd be perspiration stains under the arm, meaning they wore the outfit to a dance or something, or something would be broke. Somebody dropped something in a lawnmower and so forth. And the investors finally said, enough of that.
Yeah.
You have to have a receipt. You have to prove you bought it there, and you have to prove who's defective. So they ended that. So the customer's not always right. I mean, customers act in their own best interest. I've seen customers complain about things. I mean, you're on an airplane, so the passengers are customers, right? And they're complaining about the food.
Yeah.
I mean, do they go into a restaurant and complain about the travel? For God's sakes, you're in a tube going at 400 miles an hour, or whatever it does at 45,000 feet. Just be happy you land safely.
Agree. And it's actually funny. The customer is always right. And we're talking about this because Alan would love to get you to Australia next year. And so let us know if we should bring Alan. Let us know in chat. I think that a lot of people would love to see you here.
It would
But
be
we were
my
talking.
20th trip. That would be nice.
It would be nice. And you're 80 years old next year. Is that right?
Yes, my 20th trip of my 80th year. I look
Eighty
good, though,
twenty,
right?
the 80-20 tour. It'll be amazing. Um, but I'm
80,
doing the 80-20. Yeah, it'd be really great.
we could call the session the Pareto
The
principle.
Pareto, yeah, exactly. There we go. Look, this is how easy it is to host an event. But we were talking earlier about marketing an event and how everyone's like, yeah, you should go do this thing. There's a great book by Rob Fitzpatrick. It's called The Mum Test. And the basic premise is that your mum will say, oh, that's a great idea to everything. And like your friends will, oh, you should definitely do that. And then the second you get them to pay for it, like take out your credit card and pay for it, it's a very different story. So let's talk
Yeah.
about that in the context of maybe building services or products where it's about validating it and not really listening to what people are saying that you should do, but actually just going with what you think you should do. How do you know what to pursue?
Well, I think the first thing is the preventive action is to steel yourself that it might not work and it's not the end of the world.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so nobody has a perfect record. Nobody can predict the future. And so some great ideas that I think I've had went nowhere. And some book proposals I put in, even after all my publishing, the publisher said, "Nah, I'm not interested in that." So you take this, right? I think the second thing is that um, don't go crazy overthinking it. You mentioned this earlier in our conversation before we went live here, and that is you want to get a certain critical mass of people, small but critical mass of people who say, "I'll be there," and they pay.
Yeah.
Now you're in business. And the final thing I would say is, which is going to get a lot of people upset again, but that's what I do. When you're putting a new offer out, content is not as important as marketing. And so when I put something out there, I put it on my site, I get it into my channels, and I try to allure, I try to get people to come because of the marketing. I don't create the content
No.
until after I have critical mass. I don't even book a venue until after I have critical mass.
That's exactly what I'm doing. And thank you for sharing your process, because I think what I was getting to, like in my own mind, I'm like, oh, I was like looking at venues and like, Leanne, you don't even have people. You got no one. Like, no, I've got no one. And like people are like, oh, I want this. It's like, okay, well, so what I'm doing, and I'll just quickly share that link there. But on the 28th of August, 12 hours to book a ticket. If we get 15 people, my event next year is on. If not, it's off. And hopefully then, if we do run the event next year, Alan, that could then be a nice lead into your event, maybe later on in the year when you come to Australia too for your 80-20.
Yeah, I would love to come back. I love the country. I love the people. I mean, Australians are like New Yorkers. You can argue and bitch and moan, and then they say, let's go have a beer. It's never personal. you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Hey, you said before about, I really like this around steeling yourself for, hey, this may not happen. It may not work. And I think, I'm even doing that when coming into the 28th of August is just try not to be attached to the outcome. The other feedback story you shared was around getting those 2 nines on that smile sheet, which is ridiculous to focus on that. But a lot of us tend to we put more negative feedback or negative responses. We give that way more attention than we do positive responses. We sort of focus on that. So how can if we over listen to feedback, how is that damaging to well, A, our brand or our business?
Well, look, this is a profound self-esteem issue, and our default position is to focus on the negative.
Yeah,
Uh,
it is.
and we're not helped sometimes by the feedback that goes like this. Your mother or father or sibling or somebody important to you says, "You did great in that. Not as good as your sister." Say,
Oh, that's
and we've all
nasty.
heard this.
Mm.
Hey, you made second team. Now your cousin made first team. Hey, you got into college. That's great. Was that your backup school? We hear this crap all the time. And as adults, we hear the same thing. Well, they loved you, but that was senior management. It wasn't really the executives. And these are people who feel badly about themselves and are trying to make you feel badly. So you got to ignore them. And you
Mm.
have to be able to have your own metrics and say to yourself, what would constitute minimal success here and what would constitute maximum success? And you say, well, minimal success is people come up to me afterwards and they say, thank you for coming, nice job. So it's not, unsolicited details, but thank you for coming, nice job.
Yeah.
Maximum success is the buyer says, don't leave until we book your next session.
Yes.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what you have to do. I had a session once in Denver at 6,500 feet in the air or something. It was like being on Mount Everest. And everybody gets there when they're huffing and puffing. I mean, these are city people. They're huffing and puffing. And it went great. And the buyer says to me, I want you to come back next year. I said, okay, we can talk about the topic. He says, no, I want you to do the exact same thing. I said, you're going to have the same 90% of the same people in the room. They heard the stories. He said, you do the exact same thing. He said, they need to hear this repeatedly. So if that's what he wanted, that's what he was going to get. That's fine.
Yeah,
So
cool.
it's not up to me. It's up to him.
Yeah. I was actually thinking, one of my articles I was actually thinking of writing about was, when you go see Bon Jovi live, you want to hear "Living on a Prayer." Like that's what you want to hear. And sometimes, like when Alan Weiss, if you come to Australia, we want to hear those stories, and just like in person. But I think we also, I don't know if you do this as well, but there's so many new ideas that you kind of want to chase the new thing. And I get bored sometimes of what I do and what I share that I want to reinvent. I know it's
You
nothing
know,
to do with feedback, but what do you do with that?
you have to combine. There was a singer named Rick Nelson here in the U.S. And Rick Nelson had a string of hits as a teenager and then into his 20s. But he started to go out after new music. He got tired of singing it. So we went to Madison Square Garden, sold out, and they booed and they kept yelling, sing the old song, sing the old song. So he wrote a new song called Garden Party. And he said he went to a garden party, Madison Square Garden, and they didn't respect and they didn't understand and they didn't want to move forward. And so I think you have to combine, give them a little bit of the old,
Yep.
but also give them something new.
Yeah.
People can get jaded. And even, Billy Joel sold out Madison Square Garden 100 times. 100 times he sold it out. And we were there for the 100th.
Wow.
But everyone, even though everybody's singing the songs, they all know all the songs. In one, Sting was a guest. In another rock star was a guest. Then he'd have a special thing he did. Somebody came out and sang an operatic song, Nessun Dorma. So the shows were somewhat different,
Yes.
and he kept exploring things. And I think that's what we have to do with our careers, because once you're on a plateau, you are going to erode. You can't afford that.
Mm.
So we all have to grow, and the only way we can all grow is through innovation.
Mm. Yeah, agree. Yeah, and not like kind of disrupting yourself and looking for new ideas or remixing ideas, which is what Billy Joel was doing with bringing in new artists as well, just to kind of keep it fresh too. I read an article last week about being uncoachable, and I think it kind of relates to this. And I feel like maybe Alan, you would tell me that I'm a little bit uncoachable, but I do take a lot of what you say on because I do respect you. Um, I think it's actually people say, "Oh, it's bad to be uncoachable," but I feel like there's an element of it being a little bit good in that you're trusting your instincts. What do you say about the phrase uncoachable? Is it a good attribute or not so good?
Well, first of all, you're very coachable. I enjoy working with you. You're very coachable. But I'll point out this to you. I'll tell you another parable because I'm into this show. But the point is that let's say Frank Sinatra and Michael Jordan and Barbara Streisand and Bill Gates and you name it, all had coaches because really smart, good people realize that they are so immersed in what they do, they might not see the next thing.
Mm.
They might not appreciate what else they can do. And so a coach can say to you, would you consider trying this? And that's why we all need coaching. Otherwise, we just breathe our own exhaust and then you just asphyxiate.
Yeah. I agree in terms of getting that new perspective and going outside of, outside of what you see and opening that sort of vision by getting people to share what they notice. Earlier on, we spoke about the what if you please the audience, what if you don't please the audience, but you please the buyer, and that's okay. What happens if the buyer isn't pleased? What do you do then?
Well, if the buyer is legitimately unpleased, don't forget the customer's not always right. We talked about that.
Yes.
He's the customer.
Yes.
But if the buyer is legitimately upset, and this happened to me once in my career,
Ooh,
you give the money back, and then you offer something in addition to that.
yeah.
So I'll tell you two quick stories. We have time. I'll tell you two quick stories. One is that I overpromised. I promised this bank executive that his people would have new innovative ideas by the time we finished my innovative workshop and so forth and so on. Well, I didn't know they were serving liquor at lunch, and they didn't do very well. And the buyer was right. I never checked on it. I never said take the liquor away, and so I gave the buyer the money back. Only time I've ever done it. But the other time was when I inherited the Western office of a consulting firm. They told me we lost $400,000, so break even or close it. So I go out there and I saw all the existing clients. So there was one client from the Bank of America, big deal, says we had one of your workshops awful. This person did a horrible job. And a woman in the room, his subordinate says, I was there. It was awful. I said, I can't apologize enough. We're going to do another one for you for free. And he said, no, we don't want that. We don't want. I said, no, no. I am ethically obligated to do this.
Yeah.
We'll give another one for free. So I did it myself and I blew their socks off. And B of A became this huge client. And
Oh,
yeah,
turned
of
it
course.
around.
Yeah. So that's opportunistic innovation. And
Yes.
at the end of that year, when I had to break even or close the office, we made $1 million.
Wow, that's a really great story actually of turning it around, of using feedback. Yeah, okay. So you don't defend it at all. You don't say, "Hey, I think it was great." You listen, you understand what the issue was, and then you offer something
You always
else.
ask, what's in it for you? Can I please this buyer
Yeah.
and get something out of it myself?
Yeah.
That's a win-win, true win-win situation.
Yeah, I love that. Alan, it's always great to talk to you and hear your feedback on these Talk the Walk live streams. And hopefully we can get you to see you in Australia next year as well. Thank you so much for joining us. For those that are here live, and if you're on the recording, let us know in the comments what you thought. So yeah, cheers to you, Alan.
And cheers to you, Leanne. Thank you very much.
Thank you.